The elevator doors opened on the 49th floor with a soft, polite chime, like it didn't want to be involved in what was about to happen. Heat hit first, August heat, the kind that seeps through glass and makes even money feel tired. The conference room lights were already on too bright for that hour, reflecting off a table polished enough to show your mistakes back to you. I walked in and took the last chair, the one near the wall, the one nobody ever chooses unless they expect to leave early. My name is Elena Cross. I'm 36 years old, and I was never supposed to sit in that room. Not like this. Across the table, my younger brother Marcus was already standing. Navy suit, perfect fit, tie straight, hands resting on the back of the chair at the head of the table like it belonged to him by birthright. Maybe in his mind it did. He didn't look at me when I sat down. None of them did. My mother was leaning toward my aunt, whispering with that tight smile she used when she wanted people to think she was being kind. My sister scrolled through her phone, tapping fast, like something important might happen somewhere else. Marcus's fiancée was laughing softly at something on her screen, her heel hooked around the leg of Marcus's chair as if to mark territory. I folded my hands in my lap. The leather chair was still warm. Someone important had been sitting there before me. Marcus cleared his throat. The sound snapped the room to attention. "Thank you for coming on such short notice," he said. Calm, rehearsed. The voice he practiced in mirrors. "As you all know, Crosswell can't afford to hesitate anymore." My mother straightened. Pride rolled off her like perfume. Marcus clicked the remote. The screen lit up. A clean white slide, bold black letters. A new direction for Crosswell. He smiled. "I'll get straight to it," he continued. "Effective immediately, I'll be assuming executive control of the company." Applause broke out before the sentence finished. My mother started it. Of course she did. My aunt followed. My sister clapped once hard like punctuation. Marcus's fiancée stood beaming, clapping like she'd just won something she hadn't paid for. I didn't move, not even when Marcus finally looked at me. It was quick, a glance, the kind you give a coat rack to make sure it hasn't fallen over. That was the first snap. If you've ever had family treat you like you don't matter, like your presence is tolerated, not wanted, go ahead and let that sit for a second. And if stories like this hit a little too close to home, you might want to stay. Hit like, subscribe. Because this isn't about shouting. It's about what happens when silence runs out. Marcus kept talking. "We're divesting legacy assets," he said, clicking again. Photos of yards, rigs, people in hard hats I recognized. Men who'd worked through storms, through layoffs, through my father's funeral. "We're trimming excess labor, pivoting to analytics, automation, lean operations." My sister laughed under her breath. "Finally. Crosswell doesn't need nostalgia," Marcus said. "It needs vision." My mother nodded so hard her earrings shook. I stared at the edge of the table. There was a small scratch near my thumb. I'd put it there years ago, dropping a binder during a late-night budget review. No one remembered that. They remembered Marcus's graduation speech, his awards, his confidence. They never remembered who stayed. Marcus clicked again. Charts, arrows pointing up, big numbers, bigger promises. By the end of the quarter, he said, "We'll be positioned for acquisition or expansion. This is how we protect the family legacy." Legacy. The word tasted bitter. He turned slightly, gesturing toward me without quite acknowledging me. "Elena handles some of the technical side," he said, smiling, like he was being generous. "She's been helpful. That was the second snap. My hand tightened in my sleeve, fingertips pressing into skin. I didn't look up. Someone chuckled. I didn't need to see who. Marcus kept going. Workforce reductions, asset sales. A future where people like me were unnecessary, where the company that paid for my father's headstone was just a line item to be erased. When he finally paused, the room buzzed with approval. Phones out, messages sent, plans already being made without me. I lifted my water glass, took one sip, set it down. The clink was small, sharp. Marcus stopped mid-sentence. I raised my eyes. "Marcus," I said. One word, calm, flat. He sighed, already annoyed. "Yes, Elena." "The Gulf Emergency Response Contract," I said. The one tied to yard 3. His smile didn't move. What about it? It requires full crew availability during any transition period, I said. You sell the yard on your proposed timeline, you breach on day 29. Silence rippled. Brief, uncomfortable. Marcus laughed. Not loud. Just enough. That contract is outdated, he said. Any buyer would assume it triggers a liquidated damages clause, I said. 40+ million. My sister snorted. Oh my God. Marcus tilted his head. Are we really doing this right now? My mother leaned forward. Elena. Sweetheart, she said, voice coated in sugar. This isn't your lane. I signed the last amendment, I said. That was the third snap. Marcus's eyes hardened. You signed paperwork, he said. You don't make strategy. My aunt shook her head slowly like she was disappointed in me. You've always been so rigid. Let it go, my sister added. You're embarrassing yourself. Gaslight. Clean. Efficient. Marcus turned back to the screen. Anyway, a chair scraped. The sound cut through the room. Nora Whitman, the CFO, stood up. She didn't rush, didn't apologize, just stood there, hands folded, face neutral. Before any vote, she said, there's a procedural issue. Marcus frowned. Nora, we're in the middle company charter requires disclosure, she replied. Calm as ice. Before leadership changes of this scale. My mother stiffened. What disclosure? Nora's eyes flicked to me for half a second, then back to Marcus. We'll need to clarify voting authority, she said. Marcus smiled tight now. I think that's pretty clear. My mother finally looked at me. Not with anger, with something colder. Why do you always do this? She asked. Why can't you just be happy for your brother? The room waited for my answer. I didn't give one. Because the truth was something in me had already broken, and I wasn't there to fix it. The room didn't recover after Nora sat back down. It pretended to. Phones lit up again. Someone coughed. Marcus adjusted his cuffs like nothing had happened, but the air had shifted, thicker, watchful. Marcus smiled wider, the kind that shows teeth but no warmth. Let's not get lost in hypotheticals, he said, clicking the remote again. A new slide snapped onto the screen. Big font, clean design, headlines, not details. What matters is where Crosswell is going. He spoke faster now. Momentum, control. We're bleeding cash maintaining assets that belong in a museum, he said. Steel yards, service fleets, on-site crews. That era is over. My sister leaned forward, elbows on the table. It's embarrassing we're still running like it's 2005. Marcus nodded. Exactly. The market rewards efficiency, not sentiment. Sentiment. Another word aimed at me without using my name. I felt my jaw tighten. The taste of metal at the back of my mouth. I kept my eyes on the table, on the faint ring where my glass had been. Marcus paced slowly behind his chair, energized now. We don't need to babysit physical operations when algorithms can do it better. He looked straight at me this time. Some people get attached to processes, he said lightly. Blueprints, spreadsheets, the comfort of what they can touch. A few quiet laughs. That doesn't make them leaders. My mother smiled like she'd heard a compliment. I lifted my head. You didn't answer the question, I said. Marcus stopped walking. What question? The penalty exposure, I said. You didn't model it. A pause, longer this time. Marcus exhaled through his nose, amused. Elena, we're not going to let a legacy clause derail a transformational strategy. Clause, I repeated. Singular. It's actually 6 sections. My aunt made a sound, half sigh, half laugh. Oh, God. Marcus raised a hand. Everyone, this is what I mean. This is exactly the mindset holding us back. He turned to the room. We're talking about billions in future value, and she's stuck on footnotes. Footnotes. That was the 4th snap. You didn't read the amendment, I said. My sister laughed openly now. Because that's your job. You read. He decides. Marcus nodded approvingly. Thank you. I shifted in my seat. The chair creaked. Loud in the silence. That amendment links the Gulf contract to Yard 3, I said. Sell the yard, you lose the contract. Lose the contract, you trigger a cascade. Supplier defaults, cross-termination rights. Marcus rolled his eyes so hard I saw white. You're catastrophizing. No, I said. I'm calculating. He stepped closer to the table, palms down, leaning in. "You've been buried in operations too long. You don't see the bigger picture." My mother finally spoke again. "Elena, honey, you've always struggled with change. Struggled." I looked at her, really looked. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "When your father was alive," she continued, "he worried you'd never learn when to step back." That one landed, not a snap, a crack. Marcus seized it. "She's protective," he said almost kindly, of her little corner. Laughter. Softer but sharper. "Let's be honest," my sister added. "She doesn't want the yard sold because then what does she have?" I felt something go cold behind my ribs. Marcus nodded. "Exactly. This isn't about contracts. It's about relevance." Relevance. The word sat there ugly and heavy. "You're afraid," he said, turning fully toward me now. "And that's okay. But fear doesn't get a vote." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. That was the fifth snap. I closed it again. Slowly. Across the table, Marcus's fiancée had stopped smiling. She was watching me now, head tilted like she was studying an animal that might bite. "Marcus," she said lightly, "maybe we should hear her out, just to say we did." He waved her off. "We've heard enough." Nora shifted in her seat. I caught it in my peripheral vision, the smallest movement. A warning, maybe. Marcus turned back to the screen. "Let's talk numbers that matter." He clicked. "Projected valuations, multiples, exit scenarios. Year 3, he said we're looking at a company worth north of $2 billion. My mother's breath caught. "Oh my God," my sister whispered. "That's insane." Marcus smiled. "That's vision." He glanced at me again. "Not everyone can see it." Something in my chest tightened, then went numb. I thought of the night the pumps failed during the freeze, the calls I took at 2 a.m., the crews I rerouted, the contracts I saved by not sleeping. I thought of the emails Marcus never opened, the meetings he skipped. I thought of my father, grease on his hands, telling me, "If you know the numbers, you'll never be powerless." Marcus clicked again. Org chart, his name at the top. Alone. Below it, boxes without names. Advisory, oversight, support, support. I was already gone in his version of the future. "Voting begins in 10 minutes, Marcus said, "unless there's anything truly material." He looked at me, dared me. I spoke before I could stop myself. "You don't know the numbers," I said. The room froze. Marcus straightened. "Excuse me. You know headlines," I said. My voice sounded different now. Lower, colder. "I know exposure." My aunt scoffed. "You're being dramatic." "Dramatic," my sister echoed. "Classic Elena." My mother sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. "Why do you always have to make things difficult?" There it was, the oldest line, the one that always worked. Marcus smiled, satisfied. "Let's not do this in public." "This is public," I said. He leaned back, folding his arms. "Fine, say it." I held his gaze. "Day 29, I said. That's when Chevron walks. 42 million wired out. 30 days later, lenders call the revolver. Yard gone anyway. Fleet seized. Silence. Real silence." Marcus blinked once, then laughed. Loud. "Oh my God," he said, shaking his head. "You actually think you're the smartest person in the room." My sister laughed with him. Relief laughter. Permission granted. "You're a technician," Marcus said, "not a strategist. You don't see opportunity. You see problems. That's why she's good at her little job," my aunt added. "She spots leaks. Little job." Marcus leaned forward again, close enough now that I could smell his cologne. Expensive. New. "After this vote," he said quietly, "you won't have to worry about Yard 3, or any yard." My throat tightened. He straightened and turned back to the table. "Anything else?" he asked. From operations, no one answered. Not because there was nothing to say, because they'd already decided who mattered. My mother looked at me then. Finally. Her eyes weren't angry. They were tired. "Why can't you just let him have this?" she asked, soft, almost pleading. For once. That was the moment. The one that didn't snap. It collapsed. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. 10 minutes to the vote. Marcus stood at the head of the table, jacket unbuttoned, now confidence loosening into something closer to hunger. He rolled his shoulders once like an athlete about to finish a race he'd already decided he won. "Let's take a short recess," he said. 5 minutes. Get coffee. Stretch. No one moved. They didn't want to miss this, not the coronation. Marcus noticed, smiled. "All right, then." He tapped the remote against his palm. Once, twice. "That brings us to governance," he said. "Voting structure, board authority, execution timeline." Nora Whitman didn't look down this time. She stood. The chair legs scraped against the floor, a sharp sound. Final. Marcus turned, irritation flashing across his face. "Nora, we agreed." "No," she said, calm, even. "We didn't." That was the first crack in his voice. The room shifted, subtle, like everyone leaned back at the same time without meaning to. Nora adjusted the cuffs of her blazer. Not nervous, precise. She reached down and lifted a thin black folder from beside her chair. No logo, no tabs, just weight. "Before any vote can proceed," she said, "there's a material disclosure the board is legally obligated to hear." My mother's mouth tightened. Material how Nora didn't answer her. She walked to the center of the table and placed the folder down. Not hard, not soft. A controlled drop. Marcus laughed once. "This is unnecessary." Nora met his eyes. "It isn't." She opened the folder. Paper slid free. 1 page, cream-colored, heavier stock. 14 months ago, she said Arthur Cross executed an irrevocable transfer of voting shares. The room stilled. Marcus frowned. What transfer? Nora didn't look at him. While he was still fully competent, she continued. Arthur transferred 75% of Class A voting rights. My sister sat up straight. To who Nora turned, looked at me, said my name, Elena Cross. Silence slammed down so hard it felt physical. My mother's hand flew to her chest. "That's not funny," Marcus said. "Too fast." Nora slid the document across the table. It stopped near the center like it belonged there. "It was notarized," she said. "Filed, reported, confirmed." Marcus didn't move. "That's impossible," he said. Louder now. "My grandfather would never—" "He did," Nora said. My aunt stood halfway out of her chair. "When April 23rd of last year," Nora replied. 3 weeks before his second stroke." My sister shook her head. "You're lying." Nora looked at her. "I was in the room." The words landed wrong. Too clean, too solid. Marcus finally stepped forward, snatching the paper off the table. His hand shook, just slightly. He scanned the page once, then again. His laugh cracked. "This is fraud," he said. "You manipulated him. She manipulated him." He pointed at me like I'd grown fangs. I stayed still. Nora spoke again. 2 independent physicians evaluated Arthur that same week. Both certified full cognitive capacity. Their affidavits are attached. She tapped the folder. Marcus's face drained. Fast, like a plug had been pulled. My mother turned to me slowly. "Is this true?" I didn't answer, because the truth was already sitting in black ink between us. One of the independent directors cleared his throat. "Nora..." 75%. She nodded. "By charter, that constitutes controlling interest." Another director muttered, "Jesus." Marcus slammed the paper down. "This doesn't change anything. I've been running strategy for months." "No," Nora said. "You've been presenting." "That one cut." She continued, voice steady. "Every wire over 5 million. Every refinancing signature. Every material contract amendment for the last 14 months. She turned slightly toward me. Was approved by Elena. The room swayed. My sister's phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. No one picked it up. Marcus stared at me now. Really stared. "You knew," he said. "Not a question." I met his eyes. "I waited," I said. The words surprised even me. They came out calm. Final. Waited for what he snapped, to see how far you'd go. The independent directors were already flipping through printed copies Nora had quietly distributed. Pages rustled. Fast. Urgent. One of them whispered, "We don't have quorum." Another said, "We can't vote without her consent." Marcus's breathing went shallow. "This is elder abuse," he said. "Desperate now. You took advantage of him when he was sick." Nora didn't raise her voice. That statement is defamatory. She slid another page forward. Arthur requested the transfer, she said. He initiated it. He insisted on clarity. My mother looked between us, eyes wet. Why wouldn't he tell us? I spoke then. Because it was time. Because you never listened, I said. Marcus stepped toward me, fists clenched. You think this is over? Nora's voice cut in. Sharp. Sit down. He didn't. If you file anything, she continued, the company's outside counsel retained by Elena will countersue for breach of fiduciary duty, attempted dilution of control and interference. Marcus laughed wild now. You planned this? I nodded once. Yes. That was the moment. The one that flipped the room. The board wasn't looking at Marcus anymore. They were looking at me. Nora closed the folder. Until further notice, she said any action taken without Elena's written approval is void. She looked around the table, made eye contact with each director. The vote cannot proceed. Marcus stood frozen, mouth opening and closing without sound. My mother whispered my name, not angry, afraid. Elena, why didn't you say anything? I rose from my chair. Slowly. The leather creaked. The sound echoed. I placed my hands on the table, the same spot Marcus had claimed earlier. Because none of you asked, I said. The room went dead quiet. Outside, the sun beat against the glass, merciless, and for the first time that morning, Marcus Cross realized he wasn't standing at the head of the table. He never had been. No one spoke after that. The silence wasn't stunned. It was recalculating. Marcus was still standing, but the way he stood had changed. His shoulders had dropped, not much, just enough to notice if you knew him. He looked smaller without the room feeding him back his own reflection. Nora pulled a slim laptop from her bag and placed it in front of me. She didn't announce it. She didn't need to. I took the seat Marcus had claimed all morning. No ceremony, just gravity. Since transparency suddenly matters, I said, opening the screen, we should be clear. The projector hummed. The lights dimmed a fraction. The first slide came up. No slogans, no buzzwords, just numbers. Debt position 14 months ago. A bar chart bled red across the screen. 14 months ago, I said Crosswell was 90 days from violating its lending covenants. Marcus shook his head. That's not, Nora cut him off. It is. I clicked. A second chart replaced the first. Green this time. Clean. Calm. Refinanced, I said. Rate locked before the hikes. Revolver closed. Zero balance outstanding. One of the directors leaned forward. When did this happen? The same week my grandfather transferred voting control, I said. My mother's breath hitched. You did this alone. No, I said. I did it quietly. Marcus laughed once. It came out wrong. You expect us to believe you just what saved the company behind our backs? I clicked again. Maps, contracts, dates. Chevron renewed, I said. 5 years, expanded scope, emergency response extended across 2 additional basins. Marcus stared at the screen. You didn't know, I continued, because you were in Houston pitching exits. I was in Midland renegotiating penalties. I let that land. Another click. Exxon, I said. Master service agreement, already cash flow positive. One director whispered, Jesus. Marcus stepped back. His chair tipped, hit the credenza, and didn't quite fall. He didn't notice. You didn't authorize any of this, he said. You didn't tell the family. I sent weekly updates, I replied. Every email marked urgent, none opened. My sister looked down. Another click. Share consolidation. This is where it stops being emotional, I said, and starts being structural. The chart filled the screen. Percentages, names, dates. Any time a minor shareholder panicked after my grandfather's stroke, I said I bought their stake, off market, at book value or below. Marcus's voice went hoarse. How much? Enough, I said. Current voting control is 87%. That did it. My aunt sat down hard. That's impossible. The remaining 13%, I continued, is held by trusts that executed irrevocable proxies in my favor. Silence again, deeper this time. There is no block left to challenge anything I said. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. You hijacked this company. I looked at him. No, I said. I stabilized it. He pointed at me, shaking. You think this makes you better than us? I didn't answer right away. I clicked again. A simple list appeared. Bullet points. Short. Operational decisions. Last 12 months. Every item had my initials next to it. Budget approvals, emergency capital, contract amendments, personnel retention. All major decisions, Nora said quietly, were executed with Elena's consent. Marcus turned to her. You let this happen. She met his stare. You never asked who was signing. That one hit him in the ribs. My mother stood slowly. Her hands were trembling now, not with anger, with loss. You did all of this, she said to me without telling us. I finally looked at her. I told you, I said. You just didn't care. Her face folded. Marcus tried to recover. This isn't over, he said. Minority oppression statutes. The firm that drafted those statutes represents us, I said. Retained last week. His mouth opened, closed. If you file anything, I continued, Discovery freezes your assets, including the personal guarantees you signed on the refinance. Nora nodded once. All of them. Marcus staggered back. This is insane. No, I said. This is boring. This is accounting. I closed the laptop. I'm not here to negotiate, I said. I'm here to notify. The words felt clean. The yards stay, I continued. The crews stay. No divestiture, no layoffs. My sister whispered, You can't just— I can, I said. I turned to Nora. Effective immediately. She nodded. Marcus, I said finally, using his name again, you're on unpaid administrative leave pending review. His eyes went wild. You can't do that. I already did. I turned to my sister. You too, she gasped. Mom. My mother was crying now, quietly, mascara streaking. I looked at my aunt. You're included. She didn't argue. I looked back at Marcus. And you, I said, you're done here. Security appeared at the door, silent, efficient, like they'd been waiting. Marcus laughed once more, hysterical. You think you've won? I didn't answer, because winning wasn't the point. Nora gathered her papers. Meeting adjourned. Chairs scraped. People stood. The independent directors left first, fast, already rewriting their own memories. The room emptied until only family remained. They stood together at the far end of the table, smaller now, huddled. Marcus stared at me like I'd killed something sacred. My mother wiped her face. You didn't have to humiliate us. I picked up my folder. I didn't, I said. You did that yourselves. I walked to the door, paused. Security will escort you out, I added. 10 minutes. Then I left. The door closed behind me with a soft click. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. And for the first time in my life, the building felt like it belonged to me. The building didn't cool down after they left. The air conditioning kept running, but the heat stayed. It clung to the walls, the glass, the memory of raised voices that had nowhere to go anymore. I stood alone at the head of the table for a long moment after the door closed. No victory, no relief, just quiet. Nora waited by the door. She didn't say congratulations. She didn't smile. She just nodded once the way professionals do when something irreversible has happened and work still needs doing. Security logged the exits, she said. No incidents. Good, I replied. That was it. By noon, the story broke. Not the truth. A version. Anonymous sources, family insiders, phrases like elder manipulation, corporate coup, cold-blooded takeover. My name appeared everywhere, always paired with words like calculating and emotionless, as if those were crimes. I declined every interview. Silence was cheaper. 72 hours later, the consequences started stacking. Fast, clean, mathematical. Marcus's private equity firm placed him on immediate leave, pending an internal review. Someone finally opened his terminal history. Someone finally asked questions he couldn't charm away. Unauthorized models, internal data, personal trades timed to announcements that never happened. He was escorted out before lunch. One banker's box. No escort speech. No second chances. By 4 o'clock that same day, his lender filed notice on the penthouse. The mortgage he'd personally guaranteed when money was easy and rates were fiction. The locks changed before the sun set. His fiancée disappeared by morning. drained the joint account. $500,000 gone, boarded a flight under her middle name, left the ring in the hotel safe. She never called. My sister blocked me everywhere within hours. Every photo we shared vanished from her feed like I'd never existed. Her last post was a black square with white text. "Blood isn't everything." I didn't respond. My mother changed her number. I found out when the care facility called about my grandfather's medication refill, and the line went straight to a generic voicemail greeting. No name, no warmth. I wired 3 years of prepaid care before the woman on the phone finished apologizing. Uncle Richard sent one text at 2:17 a.m. "You destroyed this family." Then nothing. He sold the lake house a month later and disappeared somewhere dry and quiet. They all did. Marcus tried once. He showed up drunk in the lobby 3 weeks after the meeting, yelling my name up 49 floors like the building owed him something. Security handled it. The footage hit local news by evening. His face was unrecognizable, swollen, empty. I didn't watch. Work continued. That was the strangest part. The yard stayed open. The crews stayed employed. The lights came on at 4:30 every morning like they always had. Contracts renewed. New ones followed. Quiet confidence spreads faster than fear. Revenue climbed. Debt stayed gone. The noise faded. 6 months later, fall came gently. I wheeled my grandfather down the paved path behind the care facility toward the water. Leaves burned orange and gold along the edges. The lake lay flat and metallic under a pale sky. He wore the navy cardigan I'd brought last winter, the one no one else remembered. We stopped at the bench halfway down the dock, the same one we always stopped at. I locked the chair brakes and sat beside him. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Words had left him months ago, but they'd never been our strongest language. He lifted his hand, thin now, light. He squeezed mine 3 times. 1, 2, 3. The signal he'd used when I was 8 and afraid of storms. The signal he'd used when he handed me my first set of blueprints and said, "Draw it better." The same signal he used the morning he signed the transfer papers and didn't look back. I squeezed once in return. That was our deal. 3 meant I trust you. 1 meant I won't let you down. We watched a fishing boat drift across the water. A heron lifted off near the reeds and vanished into the trees. I thought about the company, about the yards running 3 shifts again, about 200 new hires, about balance sheets that didn't bleed red anymore. Everything he built was still standing, stronger than before. I thought about the others. Marcus was living under a different last name now, working inspection contracts no one cared about. My sister waited tables somewhere cold, pretending not to recognize anyone from home. My mother moved twice in 1 year, always paying cash, always alone. None of them visited. Not once. My name was the only one on the sign-in sheet for 9 months straight. The sun dipped lower, turning the lake briefly red before fading to silver again. My grandfather squeezed my hand once more. Weaker this time, but sure. I leaned closer to his ear. "It's still ours," I said. "Every inch." His mouth twitched. The smallest smile. When the light finally went, I stayed until the first stars appeared. Some families fracture and spend their lives trying to stitch themselves back together. Ours didn't fracture. It ended. And that I realized was the inheritance. Not love, not approval, responsibility. And the quiet certainty that I had carried what mattered even when no one was watching.